I'm Tom Martin, and welcome to another episode of A San Francisco Conservative, the new podcast series featuring yours truly, Tom Martin. I'm a lifelong journalist. I've produced stories for ABC News, CBS News, and CNN. I love meeting interesting people and having thought-provoking conversations, and that's exactly what we do here. Thanks to my co-host, author David Parker. David is the author of Income and Wealth and a San Francisco Conservative, and a new book of essays, which you really must pick up. Hey, David, joining us from San Francisco. How are you?
I'm fine. The weather here is fine. You should all move to San Francisco. Come on out.
No snow or monsoons, or California's been having some interesting weather lately. I don't know, but I'm glad it's good.
We had snow, actually.
Wow, that's amazing. So I know there's an important topic that's on your mind. I know it's on my mind. I have I have two young adult children. My daughter graduated from college 2 years ago, but I still have a son in his final year of college, and I love the idea of free college for everyone. I know that Senators Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren brought this up in the last round of Democratic debates, and our President Biden is trying to push this through the Supreme Court. But as an educator, surely you must love the idea of free college for everyone.
Well, there's an element of fairness when you say everyone. It's not just for people who are poor. And I went to college in the 1960s in California. It wasn't very expensive. The state university system and the University of California system was not very expensive. I worked my way through college personally, all the way, because it was subsidized. There was an element of being of universal education there, but it's like healthcare. We could have universal healthcare if it didn't cost so much. But why does healthcare and university education cost so much? It's because government is so intervened in the market. There's no market there. The consumers are not bargaining price. That's implicit in a market. And the government just throws on demand for consumers. We're going to offer you this and this and this. In healthcare, we're going to offer you this and this and this. Way more than a college student or a person wanting health insurance is asking for. So it's cost 3 times what it costs anywhere else in the world. The university system, government says, we have to do research and development. How are we going to keep up with China and the other third world countries? We need to spend a fortune on research and development. And we're going to put big buildings everywhere. They cost a lot of money. But we're not going to give you the money, university, unless you chip in something too. You get your donors to do something. Well, donors say, yeah, we'll do something, but you're asking way too much. We're going to end up, the students are going to end up paying. We're going to raise tuition way over the top to afford these huge buildings and these huge research and development. The student's just coming to learn a little bit about Aristotle, and he has to learn about financing of huge buildings. So it's 3 times what it should cost. If it wasn't 3 times what it would cost, the state could actually kind of fund it, or fund it for people who can't afford it. If you can't afford it, we'll fund it. And we can afford that for healthcare too. If you can't afford healthcare on a means-based tested basis, well, how much can you afford? All right, you pay that, and the government will pick up the tab for those who can't afford it all the way. But we don't have a market for those things, and they're way overpriced.
Yeah. Well, I have actually have 2 questions for you. I guess I don't know if they're related or not, but one is with respect to exorbitant costs of college, which I certainly feel that personally here in my family. What do you think of the idea of having government, increased government regulation so that we clamp down on that and we dictate how the colleges should be run, and they can't be allowed to charge prices like that? And then on the other hand, you'd think that our elected representatives would be, we want them to be responsive to what, is affecting us in our lives. And why can't they jump into the healthcare and insurance market and just say things have got to change? Why aren't these things happening?
Because it can't. Once you throw government in, you can't get it out. Our nation will have We'll have that forever. You can't reverse it. It started in 1933. Franklin Roosevelt says we have all kinds of problems here in the Depression, and we're going to put everybody to work, and we're going to give them an income, and we're going to give them whatever they need. We're going to give them Social Security, which they didn't have. And once you start that road, you completely reverse what the founding fathers set up. Everyone's on their own. That's Alex de Tocqueville saying, you guys are on the right track. And we reversed it. All of a sudden, freedom from government became freedom with government. To reverse something like high costs of healthcare or education, it's like reversing Social Security. We're not going to do it. So we need to have this economy crash. Everybody is out of work. Everybody is running scared. And then something might happen. Greece in the Euro crisis, 2010, we're not going to pay our debts. And Germany says, yes, you are. Well, and at the end, Greece decided they were, or they have to back out of the Euro.
Somehow, I hear what you're.
I was in Greece. I was in Greece with school teachers in the room. They showed me their check, cut in half. They were all laughing, and then I knew. That's it. That's how it has to work. Social Security cut in half, Medicare cut in half, and then colleges like student loans. We're just going to have to waive them, just like a third world country. We are becoming a third world country. We're on the road to serfdom. We're on the road.
Well, back in back in the 80s, actually, when I was getting my start in TV news at the CBS News there in Washington, it was a big deal every year, the State of the Union address, getting the speech in advance and, copying down the sound bites we're going to use on the news that night and the next day and so on. And in the most recent State of the Union address, Joe Biden sort of was playing with some of the far right-wing Republicans saying, stand up if you're all for cutting Social Security and Medicaid. No one dared stand up. Perfect. So I know you're talking about drastic reform, which we really need, but somehow I can't imagine a politician announcing that to the public and ever being elected.
There's an expression for that, the third rail. All politicians know, don't touch Social Security, don't touch Medicare. Well, don't solve the problem, because most of the budget goes to that, and national defense. And national defense for a long time under liberal presidents and Congresses was on the low side. Different times when Republicans got back into office, they say we can't be a huge nation and not be spending money for national defense. China spends all the money for national defense, and so does Russia. And we're competing with them. We can't put our head in the sand. And that's the purpose. The purpose of government, according to the founding fathers, is a neutral third party to protect us so we don't take the law in our own hands. We have a police department, and they're funded by property taxes, so citizens don't take the law in their own hands. That's the only reason we have government. And government, only Congress or a state government, House, whatever it is, can pass legislation. A president can't say, I want this and I want that. And Franklin Roosevelt started that. I want all my programs from the New Deal, and the Supreme Court for 2 years in a row vetoed every single thing. Unconstitutional. You have no right to go spend all this money. You're just going to be borrowing for it anyway. And he says, yes, I will, because I'm going to pack the Supreme Court. That's his big thing. I'll throw a whole bunch, 6 more justices. They'll approve everything I say. And then also in the 60s, they did what's called judicial activism. We'll circumvent Congress with the courts. We'll have the courts making legislation for the country. We'll pass the civil rights legislation or whatever we think is important at the time by using what's called legal procedure or civil procedure, just technical means to circumvent the law, using the law in bad faith to circumvent Congress and legislatures making law. The courts are going to make the law. And now President Biden says, courts and me are going to make the law. If the courts won't do it, That's what Roe versus Wade was. Courts threw it out because they said we had no right to do that. That was a legislative act, not a court. So that's where there's no solution except a huge crisis.
Yeah. No, I hear you. I just want to take a quick minute, sort of midway here, midstream in our episode for today, to just remind our listeners and viewers that this is a San Francisco Conservative, the new podcast series featuring yours truly, Tom Martin, journalist, and David Parker, author of Income and Wealth and a San Francisco Conservative. If you're listening on our YouTube channel, a San Francisco Conservative of the podcast, be sure to click the subscribe button so you're alerted every time a new episode goes out. If you're not there, please visit there and subscribe. But David, getting back to the economy, I know that you're a very successful real estate investor there in San Francisco. And, I love how, even on a teacher's salary, you have become very successful financially. And when we're talking about drastic change that is needed to the economy, I know you went back to school and studied the economics in detail. Why can't the Federal Reserve kind of gradually, tap on the brakes a little bit? And do we really need a drastic change?
The Federal Reserve, the purpose of the Federal Reserve is to be a lender of last resort if there's a real serious depression. Because before the Federal Reserve, the government would have to ask big bankers, J.P. Morgan or Andrew Carnegie, to Mellon, give us some money. We have to bail out all these banks or the country's going to go broke and you won't have a company yourself anymore. And then they agreed to have a Federal Reserve. And Milton Friedman, an economist I like, says that the rate of increase of population is the rate of increase of the money supply. And that's pretty much the rate of increase of, yes. And interest rates should be steady. It's increasing the money supply that causes inflation. If Biden wants to give everybody college loans, pay them off, or do anything, infrastructure, multi-billion-dollar infrastructure, where's the money coming from? My third book is called Rome 476. It fell because all tax revenue was paying interest on the debt. We're on that road. So
we see what happened in Rome, ancient Rome.
Yeah. So we can't do these things. We can't ask government to correct what it did wrong. Yeah. It can only back off. It can only back down, but you can't get in there with more government and more spending to correct the problems. You can't do it.
Well, you mentioned the tycoons of that earlier era, Mellon and Carnegie and so on. And just recently, Joe Biden said something really interesting. I thought I'd never hear a politician say. George Bush said, read my lips, no new taxes. Joe Biden said, I will raise taxes. I'll raise taxes on the billionaires. Do you think that would help us? Sure,
but you're not going to get a dime. So it's just so naive. It's just politics. You can't tax the rich. I like to say the rich all read Robin Hood when they were kids. They know that Joe Biden's coming out for them. So they have protected themselves long ago, and they're not involved in politics. They don't care what Congress is doing. It's a complete show. It's all showbiz. We have a Congress that does not represent the nation. It's extremes on left, extremes on right, because of gerrymandering electoral districts. So they're fighting and looking like animals when the nation is moderately conservative even. It doesn't represent the nation, and the nation doesn't think we should just tax the middle class to pay for everything. And of course, Biden is not saying that. All taxes are paid by the middle class. The rich pay nothing. They pay something in actual dollars, but in relation to what they own, it's nothing. And also, they raise the prices on whatever they're producing to pay for those taxes, because profit is only 3, 4, 5, 6%. Profit is not 20, 30, 50%. Marx was wrong about that stuff. So it gets always passed back to the middle class. They're paying for everything. And they should announce that, and the middle class will say, no, That might put a stop to it. Middle class, we're not paying taxes anymore because they should be paying 50 to 70% of what they earn. That would be honest. Then we're going to pay for everything. The poor don't pay. Yeah. They got it worked out, and the rich got it worked out. The rich and the poor are like buddies. They're brothers. Neither are paying any taxes.
I seem to be thinking about the 1980s today, back in my college days and all that kind of thing. But wasn't there a movement in California there where people said, we're not going to pay more taxes? How did that work out?
I don't remember, but I know about Prop 13 in California.
Yeah.
Because they kept raising property taxes to pay for the deficit. And someone says, I think Gann was one of the names. He says, no, you need to put you in chains. In California, 1% of the value that you pay for the property, that's your property tax forever. Or it can increase a tiny percent over the years. And that's very unfair to young people today. Someone who bought a home in the 1970s or 80s or something like that, the house cost a couple $100,000 or something or less. They're paying tax on $200,000. That same home today in San Francisco is $2 million. So a young person right out of school with his college loans is paying tax on a $2 million home that he bought, or his parents helped him buy it, no matter how he got it. But that $2,000 tax is $20,000 or more.
Mm-hmm.
Unfair. And they're paying, young person is paying very high Social Security, 15%, 7.5% for himself, 7.5% for the employer, but that money would go to him if he didn't have to pay Social Security. So he's being taxed 15%, he's being taxed 30 or 40% on his income. If he's making a good income, he's paying property taxes 10 times more than anybody else, his neighbor who bought the house a long time ago. It's all stacked against young people. Maybe a collective suicide of all young people. That would be a crisis. That would bring us to our feet.
That can't imagine that. That would not be good.
Yeah, that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen.
Exactly. So do you? I mean, what about forgiving college loans on a massive scale so that money could be put on down payments for a young couple's first house?
You have to be fair. Fair is one of my things. It's why I like a flat tax. Everybody pays the same rate and you can't get out of it. So if you're going to waive college loans, you have to waive college loans going way back. Or anybody who's still paying a college loan, it's waived. Because otherwise you have a cutoff date and one person is paying $50,000, another person is paying zero or much less all of a sudden, arbitrarily a cutoff date. And how long are you going to keep this into the future?
Right.
Government can't be doing stuff like that. You can't just say, we're going to bail you out. It's a third world thought process. We owe money to Greece, we owe money to Africa and Latin America. Everybody knows you're not going to get paid back. They don't have the money to pay it back. We have a lame world. Yeah, we're a very low point civilization-wise. Very low point historically.
Well, I hope there's a inflection point in the other direction soon. I think we're about
no indication.
Yeah. Well, I promised a thought-provoking conversation. I think we really had it, so I appreciate that. Before we go, David, and I will remind our viewers and our listeners, be sure to visit David's website, davidparkeressays.com. You can pick up David's 2 books and soon 3 books, Income and Wealth, A San Francisco Conservative, and the third title, David?
Rome, 476.
Excellent. And would you like to say a couple of words about your books? I love them, highly recommend them. And what will people find when they dig into your great books?
Well, my last little insult to the world that we're living at a very low civilizational point, not science and technology. So we're fooled. We think we're brilliant because our science and technology is brilliant. But that's science and technology. It's not how we talk to each other. It's not philosophically what we think, how we behave, how much integrity we have as people. That's what you learn in philosophy, virtue, integrity. The level of discussion is so low. 36% of the nation is proficient in reading and math, according to the U.S. Department of Education. 36%. And proficient is a euphemism for D plus. And that's pretty much our civilization. The level of discussion in Rome and in Athens, 5th century, so much higher. And I give examples from that period. That's what makes my books interesting to me. I love my examples. And I also say those people that time talked like us, thought like us. If I didn't tell you, if I read you a passage, you would not know when that came from, except you'd be wonder how could anybody write so well or think so clearly. That would throw you off. And then also my examples come from business versus academia. Here's how I handle this business problem, because any example is good in any field. So instead of giving college book text examples, I give examples in business that I've experienced. So everything I'm saying, I have experience with.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, I love those qualities. Again, readers, I encourage you to pick up David's books. You will learn a lot and see our modern challenges in a very different way. So as you can tell from this conversation. So thanks, David. I look forward to our next conversation.
Thank you. This was fun for me too. All right.